Is there any friction in that? Because I can only imagine that you got to really be probably very skilled. You know, cause, you know what I mean? Because we actually just had a client in Sun City, and as a matter of fact, they sold their business. They had a very large business they sold, and but their CPA, who'd been with them for years, was the intermediary who basically handled everything. And I thought to myself, like, boy, you know, that feels like it could be, you know, you could be leaving something on the table, no offense to her, but, you know, just to be like, you know, she's a CPA, you know what I mean? And they did very well for themselves. So how do you do that? What does that look like for the client? Because I'm sure they're loyal, they got friends, you know, how's that process work?
It's education.
Okay.
Right? You need, the client needs to understand, and we don't push them to not use the professional, especially if they have a very good relationship.
That's probably going to, anybody listening, like, okay,
good. No way. Because we will work with anyone that has the competency or the ability to handle what the client needs. Right? And we're not an expert in all of that. We are not CPAs. So
for sure.
We don't know everything about taxes. But we know enough so that we can work with those professionals when we make recommendations to clients. We will work with the professional to make sure that specifically works with the client. So if that person, that professional, doesn't have the capacity to do it, the client does recognize that. Maybe not right away, but over time they do recognize that without us pushing the issue.
Well, and especially if they're moving from a different state that has completely different income tax laws to South Carolina. That's important to be able to move and know that.
What we also find, by the way, is that the professional has the capacity and the ability, but they've never really interacted with the client about these specific things. So that's why they've never come up. Not because the CPA or the estate attorney doesn't know it. They just haven't had
not in
that,
their lane.
They just haven't had that ability or conversation. And it's not always the professional's fault. Sometimes it's the client. I mean, we don't always tell all the professionals we deal with because we might not realize that something's important. So it's our job to make sure that information is relayed. And oftentimes they have the ability to handle it.
See, what I'm hearing when you talk about this, how I envision this, is it's sort of bringing a cohesive, congruent philosophy, strategy to, it's like having multiple business units in a corporation, but you're all pulling understanding with the global philosophy of this entity, which is this person's family, wealth, all that, and it's getting everybody on board so
on
that
the same page.
Everybody, and that's you're sort of quarterbacking that, if you will, and being the visionary behind it. Would you say, is that a pretty accurate?
Listen, why do you think we deal with business owners? Because the way we run our business is the same philosophy. We want to make sure that within our office and offices that the culture is there. And then you need to translate that back to the culture of the professionals that are dealing with that particular client. And that's different for each
because
person.
they've got all sorts of other clients too. You're not the only one, right? So they can kind of get stuck in their sort of, this is how we do things. And this is a very important, in my mind, a very important point that you're bringing up to say, well, look, that's great, but we need you to understand like where we're going with all this and how you fit in. So you're playing nice and everybody's doing, but it's to the benefit. I think it's awesome. I think it's a really good vision for what you guys are putting together.
I think it's amazing.
It is. Yeah, you got to see. Well, we'll have to get her over because he started giving me a little pretation. I was getting sucked in. I was like, oh, I love it. Because it's like it's so well. Because we've tried to do similar things from. Real estate, mortgage, all that, because we understand there's so many insurance, so many things that touch our lives in this piece. And we've even developed a little boutique sort of thing where we tried to say, hey, look, it's not just buying a house, but you have all these other things you got to think about. So yours is on a much grander scale, but as we were going through it, I was like, oh, this is like so good, Well,
I mean, what would you say resonates the most with your clients when they go through the process?